So here we are again in the workshop. Got a fiberglass hull here. This is about 13 feet, 4 meters. A lovely little boat to keep on our local beaches for fishing and just generally pottering around. Needs quite a bit of an overhaul. We're going to start some of that now and do the rest of it later on in the winter. So this is probably going to be a 2 or 3 parter with probably a year between videos. But there you go. Let's take a look at what we're going to be doing now. This boat, probably early 1970s, getting near sort of 50 years old. It needs a major overhaul really, but we're going to do it in a couple of stages. First of all is to get the boat so it can actually be used. The outside, that's going to get a repaint probably in the winter. The underside is okay. It's been kept on a sandy beach most of its life, and considering that, it's okay. It hasn't been worn through or anything like that, and it's never had any holes put in it. It's been outside all its life. It's starting to show that now, so the simplest and easiest way to bring it back up to a decent standard would be to paint it. But for now, we just want to do the repairs that's required, sort of structurally, if you like, to get it on the water again. So first things first here, pretty much a classic issue. This deck has been replaced in the past, but yeah, usual story. Bit of ply, but it's been fiberglassed over, and now it's all gone, and in here it's all full of water. Isn't that lovely? So two things with that: it's going to rot out from inside, and the boat is probably twice the weight it should be. Where it's been sort of patch repaired and things like that, you can see here all this sort of tab work is all starting to come adrift, and of course that's going to leak, fill up, and just exacerbate the problem. Also the transom, a very classic problem with any encapsulated plywood transom, is going to rot out in time, even with the best will in the world. Mainly because outboards that get bolted on like these, they just get bored through and bolted on. Nobody ever seems to want to seal these holes and do it all properly. So in time, that all just pickles away and goes to mush, which has happened here. So to get at that, I've just cut this off there like that. These bigger holes that I cut, these are where the original bolt holes were. So I drilled those first just to have a look around them, and then obviously realised the whole thing is absolutely gone. So we cut that out, and we're going to have to clean all this up and replace it, and then glass all that back together. So that's the two sort of major jobs here to get the boat back afloat again. So this is going to require taking this deck completely off. That does throw up a few sort of design issues, if you like. Until we take it off, I doubt very much if there's any, well, we call them floors really, any frames that go across this boat to support the deck. I'd imagine it's just the moulding and the deck's been put on. We want to try and reduce the flex in the deck, and the less flex, then the longer lived the bond of the glass and the ply and all that. We might end up just putting in a load of floors frames, so they all be bonded to the hull with a flat top, and then the ply can go back on. Or we could actually make a sort of a web that's stuck to the underside, and then just bond the whole ply down, and it might not necessarily touch the hull, which is fine. So it's like a stiff structure in itself. Or we could also look at maybe doing it in more exotic materials, like a foam core or something like that. So first things first is to get the deck off, get it all cleaned out, so we can see the sort of foundation of the job, if you like. Whew. Okay, sit rep. Well, just had a quick cut off of the majority of the deck here to show you, and this is the loveliness that we've got. Yeah, obviously didn't want to cut too far to this edge here where the ply's been tabbed on. Uncertain on how deep that was, don't want to go through the hull obviously. So now we've opened it up, we can see where that edge is, and just nibble away at it to clean that up. But yeah, this looks like, I'll just move this one, this is just not stuck. Look at that, it's never stuck on there, is it? This, I don't know what sort of foam this is. You squeeze it
so it's not a closed cell foam. Pretty much sort of a standard technique, if you like, is to drill the hole and pour the foam in, but it's been very ad hoc. A couple of layers here and probably run out, not calculating it, and they've just done a few dots here. So lots of flex in the deck right from day one of when this deck was replaced. There you go, look. Because it hasn't stuck, or wouldn't have stuck, it's you know, it's not much of a structural element, is it? It's not doing any buoyancy, but it obviously worked good enough for a period of time. Is where these bilge runners are, down here. They've just moulded the shape, haven't they, back in the day when they made this, and I can never understand that they haven't closed that void off, because, you know, on a traditional boat you make the hull's all watertight, and then you put your bilge runners on, and the bilge runners to a certain degree are sacrificial, whereas you see this so often on this type of boat in fiberglass. They've made the shape correctly, you know, when you look at, you know, lovely bilge runners on the outside, but they're hollow, aren't they? And any stone that's gonna, or rock or sand that wears through from the outside, as soon as it punches that, you've got a leak. And also, if you wanted to put some sort of rubbing strip on the outside of that, keel band or something, you're going to fasten through, your fasten's going to come through into a void. So I've got some foam somewhere, some structural foam in sheet form, and I think I'm just going to bond some strips in there, then glass over the top, so that if there's ever a knock into those bilge runners from the outside, and it, you know, a big sort of shark's tooth sort of bite out of it, it's not going to leak, is it? You'd have to actually puncture the hole. So yeah, we'll just do that slight mod as we go. Okay, well, I wasn't really going to film this because it's just a filthy horrible job. Yeah, classic of how not to do things, and why preparation in terms of the substrates and all the bits and bobs is key with composites. So let's have a look at this a minute. This is the tabbing on the side of the hull, and as you can see, it's just all pinged off in a oneer. Hasn't stuck at all, even though it looked like it was all a sort of a homogeneous sort of layup. This is the bow section up here. Look, that's never ever stuck on anything ever before. This is the aft part here. We were looking at it from here, from the transom, just pinged off. Obviously just the same like the foam. Look, they've all just come off. None of these have stuck to anything. As you can see, look, and these are absolutely sopping wet. You squash them and they're full of water. Taking about 30 litres of water out, hoovered up. So that's 30 kilos right there. So that tabbing I just showed you, you can see where the grey paint is. This is original cream paint. That's the grey paint or flow coat or whatever used. And that hasn't even been keyed, sanded. It's just been glassed over. So you can imagine, you know, a boat that's been used on the salt water, stored outside, is going to have all sorts of nasties on the surface. And you've got to prep that up, you know, wash it down, degrease it, sand it, key it up. But that is also a slight drawback of using a polyester resin instead of a glue as such, because it's secondary bonding, and that's what's happened there. Yeah, so here we go, look, that all looks okay, doesn't it? But here, just one-handed with a crowbar, could probably almost just, it's just pinging off. How crazy is that? So there you go. No wonder it leaked. But I'm basically sort of showing you that for if you're doing any repairs or modifications to your own boat, whether it's a small one like this or a yacht, tabbing in pieces. Obviously that was put there like that, then glassed over. You've got to be super critical with all this stuff. So one thing when you're grinding and cleaning up and things like that is you end up with essentially a dry, clean surface. It's a great indicator of any moisture anywhere else. I mean, if you've got boats with built-in buoyancy and things like that and you're doing repairs, sometimes you can grind them back
and you go tabbing, and you can see that, you know, it's like mould essentially, but it's a damp in the laminate itself. I was cleaning this up and I could see instantly, really, there's a couple of spaces where there was some water, and just standing in it you could see a few spots sort of squishing out, and sure enough, let's have a look here. I've drilled a hole, and this sort of where the sort of keel is, they've glassed over a bit of ply. To me it looks the same ply that the deck was, so I suspect this has been glassed on when they've redone the deck. I think that water has come in from the water that was between the deck, rather than come up through a hole in the bottom. I think that's probably it, especially as this boat has spent probably 2/3 of its life sat on a trailer in the boat park. So it's going to have rainwater and all the rest of it, which was probably most of what was in here. So I think that's what's happened. I think that water's come from the inside and it's full up. That's all got to come off. Okay, one thing that's important to do, especially with a sort of bare hull like this, an older hull as well, it's quite flexible, so you need to set it up true before you glue anything back in. In terms of datums, all I've got really is the gunnel tops, and sort of technically that might not be accurate because we've got a separate moulding on top of the hull, but it's all we can go to, really. So I'm just setting the boat up so it's level across at various points, and this hull is extremely flexible. So I've done two things. I've levelled it athwartships. I'm not too worried about fore and aft. That's just going to do its own thing, so they haven't got any twists. So they've got a level across here, I've got a level back there which is level as well, so there isn't any wind or twist in the boat that way. And also standing and fitting everything in the bottom there's quite a lot of flex, so that's no good if I'm going to be in there gluing things in. So obviously got to support the bottom of the boat as well. So got the standard sort of shores on the sides here. These are also helping to prop the boat up true, and as well as underneath got these random blocks and wedges at various points. You know, when I stand inside or lean inside, it isn't going to sag down you know, an inch or two or whatever it is. As I say, not too worried about the bow being up or down. I'm more interested about being not in wind, as we call it, and supporting the bottom for when I come to glue things in there. And carrying on to that, I've decided now that what I'm going to do is use a structural foam in here to make that a completely closed compartment. So the bottom of the boat will be like a surfboard, if you like, you know, a solid block of foam with fiberglass at either side. And I'm going to be using this stuff here, and I'm just going to shape this to suit. This is 50mm thick, which is the thickness of the deck at the aft end there by the transom, and I'm just going to taper this, squidge it all down with a load of epoxy, and then glass over it. So I've got a yellow string line in here, set at the height at that datum point there, and a height up at the bow there. I've set that at the lower depth, so that's 50mm below the finished height of the deck. So I just need to use that as a datum to give me a flat plane to then put the thicker boards on top. I'm going to glue in a vertical piece of foam, which I can then trim to a straight line, and then I can then come off of that either side to create a flat that way. So that's going to do a couple of things using that structural foam. It's going to beef up the bottom to give that a bit more stiffness and a bit more rigidity, you know, because it's older and slightly weaker than it was possibly. It's going to fill the void, and so if you ever get a ding in the bottom, it's not going to fill up with water. It's closed cell foam, it's structural. There you go, the armour cell pet. It's made out of recycled plastic, so it's quite a green foam to use. Being the density that it is, I mean, you can put screws in, you can treat this like plywood essentially. You can screw into this, you know, I can stand on this, no problem at all. It's absolutely solid, you know, it's not soft and it won't crush, which I think for a boat that's used on the beach and in amongst rocks, fishing the odd lobster, hunting for bass and things like that, I think it's a good thing. certainly a lot better than the void full of water that was there before. Okay, first phase of rebuild really, and that is just filling up these void of the bilge runners and the keel. I've got a strip there which is profiled to go in there like that, and that's just been bedded on a bit of epoxy both sides. Also done for the main keel, and I've put this centre sort of spine down, just bedded on epoxy again, and then the plan is then to fill up either side as we go. So by having the keel filled, first of all, it's given me a flat to accurately shape the bottom of these this sort of keel spine, if you like, let's call it that. Get a nice sort of squidge there, so that's all one big sort of homogeneous sort of foam filled core right through the keel now. Right, just a quick review then of where we're at. So got the lower bits of foam all glued in to sort of level plane, and then we've got a 50mm actual flat sheets that are now going to be fitted on there. So there's the sort of bow section ready to sort of squidge in, and I've got these other two here down ready to go. That's basically the crux of it, and then I'm just going to slather all that in epoxy, fill in all the gaps and things like that with a serrated squeegee, and then just set these on top. So we've got all the foam in now, and what I've done there, I've filleted and tabbed the edges, because laying a piece of mat on here and glassing that on, I'm not going to try and do in one go. So and as you can see, you've got dirty feet on there, so I can now prep all that again as a sort of separate job to glass the whole lot over. This back end here is basically sort of finished. I've done this with biax tape, all the tabbing, and I can just sort of glass this deck top now separately. Bit hot. It's always a one-stop shop when you're doing some laying up. You've basically got start and finish, especially so with epoxy really, because of the blush that it gets on the top. Anyway, I use Cyclamen, so there's less of that than other brands. I didn't film actually doing it like everything else. It's just too much chaos. You know, I'm not a videographer. A couple of points about peel ply. Doing it sort of secondary, if you like. You put your mat on, it's all wetted out, it's all finished, then you put the peel ply on again. You've got to make sure that the peel ply is nice and flat and no humps and bumps, crinkles and creases, things like that, as you see here. And it also itself needs to be wetted out slightly, because it is another mat, it's another stack in your layup, and you want in this case the epoxy to be on the top, and you don't want the peel ply, as thin as it is, to sort of reduce your resin content and things like that. I've laid it on there, I've laid it out. Sometimes you can go over it with a squeegee and things like that if you want to, but this bit here is where there's an overlap, so I'm not too worried about that. And all these overlaps here. What you don't want really in an ideal world is what I've got here, and this is my first sort of largest piece, which is an offcut as always, which I've kept, and obviously it's been folded up and mistreated, and I've put it down there like a cheapskate, and it won't lie flat. And so I've got the creases there which has been folded, and there's the odd bubble here, which, you know, is no great shakes really, because you know, I'm going to sand the deck anyway, but that's just a sort of indication of good, bad. And in any of the sort of awkward areas, I've just used peel ply in a tape form, smaller pieces, easier to control. So here we are, there's my little sort of cutting station, cardboard on a swept up concrete floor, using my level as a straight edge. There's my peel ply here, my twill here. Now just unroll it, measure what I need, cut it with the scissors, and then carefully put it straight into the boat. Laying up wise, you know, mixing bucket, disposable brush, disposable foam roller, paint tray, squeegee, gloves. And like most of these things, it's about preparation, isn't it? So I cut all my mat first, or dry fitted it, hoovered up about 20 times. You just want to be scrupulous, you don't want any bits and bobs underneath. I dry fitted everything, and rather than remove it from the boat and you know, in a tidy stack, and then come back in again. I just sort of peeled it back, wetted the area out, put the first layer down, wetted that out, put the second layer down, wetted that out, moved back. So in terms of overlap of the mat, they're sort of slightly staggered. So the lower mat is longer than the top mat, and then the next mat that comes along, that butts over by about 20 mil over the lower mat, and then the second mat on the second section, if you like, comes over that joint and then goes over the joint on the top mat of the first section. You do end up with it slightly thicker, but of course I'm going to be sanding this, and to sand it level you still end up with 2 layers of mat thickness. Okay, one deck basically finished, other than cosmetics. Let's crack on.
All these old bolt holes and rusty old holes I've just drilled out and countersunk, so they're sort of clean, if you like, for any glue to stick to. And then this piece that they cut off here, that's all cleaned up, ready. And I've just been dry fitting some foam in here. It's a little bit of a jigsaw, but with offcuts it's great, so they're going to go in here. And the thing with this type of foam is that you can machine it with woodworking tools, so you can cut it with a table saw, and then you can shove it through your planer thicknesser if you've got one, so you can be quite accurate with it with this sort of job. So yeah, these are just going to all connect in here, and you can see I've cut little scarf joints, if you like, so that they a little bit more sort of structural bonding. This one's going to come off in there, and so on. So it was a bit of an odd one, this transom sort of whole sort of blocking, if you like, because this boat is basically 2 mouldings. You got your deck, and then you got your sort of rim, sort of seating gunnel moulding. You can see here that you got the top moulding, if you like, and it would have had a bit of ply bonded to the back and glassed over, and you can see what that is. But when they've put the sort of top deck moulding on, for whatever reason it hasn't bonded, or they haven't put any squidge or any sort of bonding paste between the two. And so even from new, I think you can imagine an outboard clamped on here, you know, there's going to be all sorts of flexing going on right from the get-go, really. So it's amazing how it sort of lasted. So, but I'm going to fill this little bit of a void up, and you know, as is the case, it's tapered, isn't it? So I've had to make little tapers here in this structural foam. That's going to get epoxied on there, and then the other foam is then going to go on there like that, all just bolted together with thickened epoxy, which should actually resolve the whole issue. And then once all that's all glued up and cured, I'm then going to come back, clean all these both faces up, a couple of layers of glass mat on there, epoxied on, and we should be good to go.
Right, so this is now solid on there. Just going to clean up these holes, glass in some circles of mat, and then glass over the whole lot here. Absolutely solid now, and it's all stuck underneath there. That's all one big homogeneous lump, which is what you want. So all the holes in the sort of skins of the transom all filled now. I've used an epoxy with colloidal silica and also glass chopped strands as a filler. So that's absolutely rock hard in there now. Obviously you wouldn't fill these holes if it was just a single skin. You'd have to do that like a sort of proper fiberglass repair. So all sanded flat, 2 layers of twill, got a bit of peel ply there that will go over the top. So I'm just going to epoxy this now, all one side all the way around to the other, just as a sort of a finishing coat, really. So there you go, 2 layers of glass gone on there, and peel ply it over. Because it's a woven mat I'm using, then you can be quite sort of vigorous with the brush to wet it out. So wet out the surface first, put the mat on, then wet that out. And then I just used a foam roller here just to consolidate, get any air out of the mat, get it all nice and flat, and that sort of thing. So yeah, quite simple and straightforward. Same again with the, as I did with the deck, with the peel ply, is I go over the peel ply again to make sure that the peel ply is wetted out. You know, if you're doing a vacuum bag or something like that, then it's doing it automatically, but it's quite easy to, you know, just use just enough resin for your layup. You put the peel ply on, and if you don't actually work it and manipulate it so it's nice and flat and all the rest of it, it can all become a bit of a nightmare. So everything cured. I've just taken the peel ply off the transom here and given it a sort of light sand just to feather it all in, feather these edges, things like that, so that's nice and smooth, just to take the sort of grain of the peel ply off, and that gives you a lovely smooth surface. So that's all ready to go. And I've done a similar thing around the edges of the deck. You see I've left the peel ply in the middle. That's just to keep it clean, you know, dirt and crud on my footwear. And I'm just sort of basically feathered in all the sort of raggedy edges of the cloth and mat everywhere, just giving it a light sort of sand, because I'm going to be painting that strip all around and the sort of transom area in a 2-pack paint. And then when that's cured, we'll be putting a deck sort of non-slip on there as well. So I'll have a margin that's pre-painted that I can then put my deck paint onto. So that's where we're at now. So just hoover that up, quick whiz around with some acetone, mask it up, and off we go with the paint. So gone as far as we're going to go now with this job, so I'll show you a little close up. So painted on the non-slip deck there, the cream. Got the 2-pack grey there as sort of an edging, and the transom all painted up. That's it now. Boat's ready. It can go in for the rest of the season, so the owner can actually use the boat, and then we'll have it in the winter and do a complete refinish paint job. And no doubt we'll go over what we've done here. It should be good for another 40 years or so, I should think. That's the age of the boat currently. So we've got a complete solid foam deck there. So it's almost like a surfboard, isn't it? It's foam with glass both sides, the hull and the deck sort of thing, completely encapsulated, and a redone transom there. So that's good to go as well now for a new engine. So perhaps if you're going to be doing a similar job yourself at home, you might have got a few pointers from this video. If so, give us a thumbs up, always appreciated. Sun's come out, it's nice and warm for a lovely summer's day for a change. It's the weekend, so I'm going to get out and maybe do a bit of dinghy sailing myself. So hope you're on the water and not doing these sort of jobs in the middle of the sailing season. It should be winter work really, but there you go. All right, see you again.